The hook asterisk. I still remember the exact moment the room fell silent. I was standing at the podium of the International Symposium on Medicinal Plants, my heart thumping like a drum, my hands trembling as I lifted the single slide that carried my name, Dr. Maya Alvarez, ethnobotanist asterisk. The flash of a camera caught my face as the lights dimmed for the last speaker. A senior professor, one who had mentored me for years, leaned forward, cleared his throat, and said in a tone that felt like a judgment call from the heavens, "Maya, your work is too speculative, too folk tale. We can't afford to fund a hobby in a field that should stay in the lab." The applause that followed was a thin, nervous ripple barely reaching the back of the hall. My phone buzzed, and a text from my mother glowed on the screen. "We told you this would happen, stop wasting everyone's time." My brother, the only sibling who ever believed in me, sent a hurried emoji, his eyes wide behind the pixel. My aunt muttered, "I knew she'd never grow up." In that instant, every whisper, every eye roll, every dismissal my family had ever heaped onto me surged in my chest like a tidal wave. I felt the weight of their words settle on my shoulders, heavy as the mountain of grant rejections that had already buried me. The room, my colleagues, even the plants I had studied for years, all seemed to confirm that I was a disgrace. The only thing that didn't tremble was the stubborn spark inside me, the belief that somewhere, hidden among the mist-clad foothills of a forgotten tribe, real healing could be found. The painful departure and relentless pursuit. When I stepped out of that auditorium, I didn't walk, I fled. I boarded a battered train that wound through endless wheat fields, past factories that smelled of steel and regret, toward a single address I'd scribbled months ago. Village of the Stone People, the Andes. The invitation had come in an email from a small NGO that respected indigenous knowledge, not from any prestigious journal. My family's disapproval was a badge I wore with both shame and resolve. The first night in the village, I sat in a mud brick hut with a woman named Leela, her hands cracked from years of grinding spices and her eyes reflecting a depth older than the mountains. She spoke in a language I could only translate through my notebook, handwritten symbols, sketches of leaves, and the names of plants passed down like heirlooms. "Our ancestors say that when the earth loses its heartbeat, the herbs sing louder," she told me, and I felt my own heartbeat sync with the rhythm of the rustling wind. I abandoned my academic robes, my lab coat, and my polished PowerPoint. I traded my sterile, climate-controlled greenhouse for a patch of cracked earth, a leaky tent, and a fire that never died. I learned to listen to the subtle shift of wind that meant a new herb was blooming, to read the patterns of rain that indicated the soil was finally gaining trust. Each day was a battle. Battling dehydration, battling my own doubt, battling the knowledge that the world outside would see me as a footnote in a discarded report. I was mocked, not just by the scientific elite, but by the lingering whispers of my own family. "You'll be back on the couch in a month," they told each other over phone calls, a joke that felt more like a curse. Yet I kept pulling up the same tired, stubborn vines that had grown in my heart, vines of curiosity, humility, and the unshakable belief that a seed never truly dies. The relentless pursuit turned into an obsessive rhythm. I spent months documenting the bitter bark of cinchona for malaria, the calming sap of yarrow for wounds, the potent roots of clove that could quiet a fever. I learned the chants that the healers sang to coax the plants into revealing their secrets, and I recorded each chant in the creases of my notebook, then in the sound files of my voice recorder. Every setback sharpened me. A monsoon washed away a freshly planted medicinal garden, leaving my hands raw and my resolve shaky. The scientific community mocked my methods, labeling them pseudoscience on social media, while a rival biotech firm stole my notes and tried to patent a derivative plant that could treat chronic pain. I fought back not with lawsuits but with a deeper proof that only nature could provide. I taught the villagers how to grow a 10-acre sanctuary of wild sage and native rosemary which they used to build a health clinic that treated the entire region without a single prescription drug. The clinic's data, compiled in a simple ledger, showed a 73% drop in reported illnesses after a year, the arduous ascension and profound triumph. 2 years after I left my family's house, the barren valley that once seemed a desolate scar in my memory transformed into a thriving oasis of medicinal flora. The once dry riverbed now overflowed with clear water, fed by a system of natural stone channels that mimicked the ancient flow gardens we'd uncovered in Leela's legends. The community, once skeptical, sang a chorus of gratitude for a plant that healed their children's coughs and restored vigor to their elders. The breakthrough came when we isolated a compound from the rare cyananthus that could regenerate damaged nerve fibers. It was not a drug with a glossy wrapper or a patented name. It was a pure extract that, when applied, coaxed the body's own cells to repair. We published our findings in an open-access journal titled Traditional Ethnobotany as a Blueprint for Regenerative Medicine. Within months, the paper went viral, cited in major medical conferences, and pharma giants, once dismissive, began calling our lab a beacon of innovation. I never returned to the sterile halls of academia. Instead, I founded EcoHeal*, a nonprofit that partnered with isolated tribes worldwide to harvest, cultivate, and share traditional medicinal knowledge. The organization's annual impact report, graph after graph, showed the same pattern of growth that had once been barren: a 40% rise in the number of endemic plants saved, a 60% reduction in antibiotic use in the villages we served, and most importantly, a growing tide of credibility among the scientific community. The day the World Health Organization invited me to speak at a global summit, I felt a quiet triumph settle in my bones. The same silence that had once crushed me now held the promise of an applause that could echo across continents. The cathartic return and poetic justice. 6 months later, I found myself standing on the cracked porch of my childhood home, a box of seedlings cradled in my arms. The house had not changed, a familiar red door, the same cracked front steps, but the landscape around it had. The field that once lay barren, an echo of my father's disappointment, now burst with rows of rosemary, sage, and a newly sprouted cyananthus grove that shimmered under the late afternoon sun. My mother, my brother, and my aunt, all gathered in the doorway, eyes widened, lips trembling, watched as I spread the seedlings, laying each one with reverence like a ritual. The moment a sprout pushed through the soil, a tiny green tendril catching the light, my brother whispered, "Maya, you've done it." The words fell like rain, soft but undeniable. My mother, whose earlier text had dismissed my work, stepped forward, her hands still stained with the dust of years in a kitchen she'd never imagined leaving. I never understood," she said, voice cracking, "what you meant when you talked about the songs of the earth. I thought you were chasing a dream that never mattered." She placed a trembling hand on the new herb, the one that could numb pain without a needle. "Now I see, this is what you gave us." I knelt, brushing a leaf gently against my cheek. "It wasn't a dream," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "It was a promise I made to the people who taught me that every plant has a story worth listening to. The world tried to silence me, but the earth never stopped whispering." My aunt, who had once scoffed at my ridiculous pursuit, stared at the flourishing grove and then at the distant, gleaming laboratory we'd built on the same land, where scientists from around the globe now visited to learn from the tribe's oral traditions. "We were wrong," she said, eyes wet, "and the hurt we caused is a weight we can't forget. But now I see the proof that listening, even when it sounds foolish, can change lives." We spent the night under that canopy of green, sharing stories: my mother's tales of worry, my aunt's embarrassed apologies, my brother's proud grin, and the sky above us seemed to lighten with each confession. The fire crackled and the scent of rosemary rose in the night air, a perfume of redemption, the legacy. When the sunrise painted the horizon gold the next morning, the entire valley was bathed in light. The EcoHeal Center stood as a stone wall of glass, its gardens alive with colors that mirrored the spectrum of hope. The World Health Organization's representatives arrived, offering a partnership that would scale our discoveries globally. The same families that had once dismissed my work were now applauding my presence, their applause genuine, their gratitude sincere. In the final interview with a national news channel, I answered the host's question about how I dealt with past betrayals with a calm that surprised even me. "Karma's ledger isn't a ledger of punishment," I said, "it's a ledger of lessons. When you plant a seed of truth, the soil may reject it at first, but if you water it with persistence and love, it will eventually bloom. The world sees the bloom, and the old wounds, no matter how deep, finally heal." I returned to the city not as the broken daughter who had been shamed, but as the founder of a movement that reshaped modern medicine. The research papers, the clinics, the thriving ecosystems, every single thing was a testament to the forgotten wisdom of our ancestors and the stubborn spark of a girl who refused to let her family's disbelief define her destiny. The positive insight. Now, whenever I walk into a lecture hall or a conference, I keep a single seed in my pocket, I carry it not as a souvenir but as a reminder. The smallest thing can grow into a forest if nurtured with respect, if fed by the voices that were once silenced. My family still calls me the ridiculous botanist, but they do so with a smile, a nod of understanding, and a newfound respect for the path that was once mocked. The world is still full of skeptics, of doors that slam shut, of voices that tell you it's impossible. Yet every time I look at the thriving garden in my hometown, my mother's kitchen now infused with rosemary, my brother's coffee table adorned with a dried cyananthus asterisk leaf, my aunt's hands softened by the same herb that once healed her own chronic pain, I hear a quiet affirmation echoing through the valley. You are not the exception, you are the proof. My journey taught me that true triumph is never just a headline or a breakthrough. It is the quiet moment when the people who once laughed at you hold the same plant you nurtured, feel its relief, and understand that the ridiculous dream you chased was, in fact, the most practical, most healing, and most human thing we could have done. And in that truth, I finally find the peace that no grant ever gave me, the peace of knowing that I have turned their derision into a garden that heals the world. End asterisk.